It's often been said, happy wife, happy life. Those of us that are married know that there's a lot of truth in that statement. You know, we've been learning about Peter's instructions to wives as they live with their husbands. But on today's Dining Room Devo, we're going to turn it around. We're going to talk about a husband's responsibilities to his wife. We're looking at 1 Peter 3, verse 7. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect, as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Maybe the first thing that sticks out in that verse is that phrase, weaker partner. Now, this verse is sometimes misunderstood by those who think that Christianity somehow sees women as less than men. But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the Greek here that's translated as weaker refers simply to physical strength. It's just true that on average, men are physically stronger than women. Now, there's exceptions, of course. But when Peter says that they are weaker partners, he's not in any way, that word does not refer at all to intellect or to moral strength or to spiritual strength. Peter is not saying in any way that women are inferior to men. In fact, the verse really lifts women above the expectations of first century Roman culture and also Jewish culture at the time, which generally saw women as second-class citizens. I mean, in ancient Israel, a woman's testimony could not even be considered in court. And the Pharisees of the first century actually had ritualistic prayers where they praised God. They thanked God that he did not make them women. Peter here gives women equality with men in that it says here that they are heirs with us. The women are heirs with men of the gracious gift of life. He says both of you, men, women, are going to receive eternal life. You are equal in this matter. And so having just spoken to wives, Peter now gives men instructions as to how they are to treat their wives. And he says that we are to be considerate. Now, Peter has just told us in chapter 1 that we need to love other believers deeply, and we really should love other believers deeply. And we've talked about that in some of our videos. But we have to be careful not to neglect the needs of our spouse at the expense of the needs of other believers. I mean, I've seen couples who love their church and who serve faithfully at their church, but whose marriages fall apart because they never do for each other what they do for the church. I mean, this should never happen in Christian marriages. I mean, you're called to ministry, certainly, but your first ministry is in your own home. We should sacrifice for, and we should serve, and we should comfort all believers, but how much more our wives? This is what Paul says in Ephesians 5, verse 28. He says, in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. He who loves his wife loves himself. Look, we don't neglect to take care of ourselves, men. At least I hope we don't. And we shouldn't neglect the needs of our wives either, but instead we should consider their needs and then seek to fill those needs. I mean, men, if she's tired, do the laundry, even if you don't do it very well. Offer to do the grocery shopping. And when she talks, really listen. The bottom line is that we need to pay attention because she is precious to you. When I'm leading a couple in the marriage ceremony and I get to the marriage pledge, I don't have them say, I, John, take you, Mary, to be my wife. Instead, I have them say, I, John, take you, Mary, as God's gift to be my wife. And that phrase, as God's gift, is very important, I believe. Your spouse is God's gift to you. Don't forget that. Men, treat your wife as the God-given treasure she is. Peter then goes on to say that we need to treat our wives with respect. Look, though in general women may have less physical strength than men, they should be honored for their mental and spiritual toughness and the role that God has called them to in leadership within the family. One of the best things that we can do is to make her feel genuinely appreciated. Proverbs 31 says that a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So men, how often do you praise your wife for the things she does? Does she feel appreciated? How often do you pray for her? Do you give thanks for her? And all of these things are a part of showing her respect. Peter, at the end of verse 7, implies that if we aren't considerate and respectful towards our wives, that God won't accept our prayers. Well, why? Well, it's very similar to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13. Do you remember about that? When he talks about love? He says, no matter what we do, if we don't have love, we accomplish nothing. And if we don't love our wives as we ought, our faith is really not all that genuine. And we should not expect God to act on our behalf. We need to love and appreciate and respect our wives. Now, none of us do this perfectly, right? We're all hopefully getting better. I certainly am not perfect at this, but we should be getting better over time. I mean, we're told to love our wives as Christ loved the church. So the question is, do our wives see more of Jesus in us today than they did yesterday? Is our love for her more Christ-like every day? That should be our goal. On the next Dining Room Devo, we're going to look at how life in the church is kind of like music. Feel free to like or comment on this video. Let us know what you think. Visit us at newparisfirst.com. And we'll see you next time on Dining Room Devos. May God bless you.